Jazz Video Guy live recap or Jazz Video Guy. Jazz Video. Okay, here I am here. Let me just unlock myself on Facebook. Okay, and I'm just going to check out YouTube here. And then I'll get started here. I want to talk about some of the things that have happened in the year 2020 in the world of jazz on my channel, my show, which is new, and other things in the music. So I'm not going to focus on the political situation. Certainly, the world of jazz has been affected by the virus. It's horrible for performing artists in these times. My goodness, trying to make a living. How many people make their living by their performances? Very few musicians make their living from recorded music. That has turned around completely. I heard a story on NPR yesterday about Spotify. Spotify, there's an extremely, and that's putting it mildly, unjust system for musicians' plays or streams, whatever they call it, to be monetized. I think they pay out like one hundredth of a cent for each stream, whatever it is. Musicians sometimes on Facebook will post their revenue checks. $1.87, $6.15. The old record labels worked with Spotify at the beginning because they had all this warehoused music. They unfortunately forgot there's musicians who should be paid for. No, that didn't work out. Anyway, Spotify, a company where the support staff makes $150,000 a year, not to minimize the work of the support staff, but the money is not going to musicians. Anyway, musicians would like to, there's an organization actually whose name I forget, I'll have to re-access the NPR story about trying to get musicians more money. And Spotify kind of came back and said, well, we can't offer more money, but if they agree to take a 25% cut, we will give them, their playlists will be ranked higher so they will be heard more. But they'll make 25% less than 1/100th of, horrible situation there. But we persevere. Interesting how streaming has become so important in all aspects of our culture now, particular performances. We can never, hey Alan, how are you? A friend of mine from Tucson here. Alan Hershkowitz. I lost my train of thought here. Oh, streaming, yeah. Streaming's great. It's nice to see people. Before COVID, I would watch streams from Mesro and Smalls almost every night. That was my access. I'm in Tucson, Arizona. That was my access to the New York City scene, so to speak. Being able to see those live performances, fantastic. And now Spike Wilner, who's an activist who cares about this music and the musicians who play it, is streaming still from Smalls and paying musicians. A lot of musicians are streaming from their houses. They don't get paid anything. It's hard to get people. Most of the people who listen to jazz don't have very much money to start with. Trying to get money from them during COVID, it's hard. Anyway, that's one of the sad things about the way this year has ended here, the uncertainty surrounding what's going to happen with live performances. In New York, the Jazz Standard is closed. Other places are going to close, but we have to have hope that this will eventually be over. Perhaps it's going to take longer than we would like, but it will end, and there will be performances, and there will be new opportunities. I appreciate the shout out about my beard here. Yes, this is a recent addition to my life, my beard. So let's hope for a positive future, but we never know what's going to happen. A year ago, we couldn't have predicted this. It's hard for musicians. A lot of people playing on the street in New York, and now streaming. And I got into the streaming thing this year on the Jazz Video Guy channel because at the beginning of the pandemic, during the initial lockdown, I guess it was like March, that's when it started to really get weird. I was like waking up. I didn't know what day it was, what time it was. I was like in another zone, trying to figure out exactly what was going on at that time. And I had thought about doing a show. My friend from Belgium and Ghana, Carol, hello, nice to see you. I needed something to put some order into my life. And I'd thought about streaming. I had flirted with streaming a bit. I mean, I did some of the first live performances of streaming on the web in 1999, live from Birdland with Dave Brubeck Quartet and the Saxophone Summit with my friends Michael Brecker, Joe Lovano, and Dave Liebman. You can see some of those videos on my channel. That was back in 99 when no one had broadband. No one could really watch. Now, very easy to do live streaming. Everybody can get video. Anybody can broadcast. So I said, why don't I do a show? I'll do a daily show because I know from my experience on the web, you want to get people's attention, you got to be out there every day initially. And I'll do interviews with my friends. I have a lot of friends in the world of jazz. I've been involved in this music my entire life. And I got a lot of videos, and I'll put them together. And I'll do a show called Jazz Video Guy Live. And the first thing I do is I had to find the software to do this. Luckily, I hooked up with a program that I highly recommend called Ecamm Live, which makes it very easy to broadcast to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously and bring in video and guests. And, oh man, a friend from Brazil. Hello, Brazil. One of the things about my work is being able to reach an international audience. There's people all around the world who love this music. So I started to do this live show every day. And it was pretty hard initially. Never did anything like this before, learning the software. And I guess for the first 3 months, I did 5 shows a week. Wow, what a production. Hello, Mythic Mesa. I'm a little spaced. Yeah, it's 8:29. It's been a long day, my friends. Plus, I went to the dispensary today, so I like to go to the dispensary and sample their wares. Marijuana is now legal in Arizona. Hey. But I had a medical card, so it's been legal for me for 5 years. In any event, I lost my train of thought. This is what happens when you're stoned sometimes. Okay, so I'm doing my show, and it's a lot of fun because what's happening is I'm connecting with a lot of my friends who I haven't seen, and like since I moved to Arizona, I get to see my friends in the jazz world from New York that often. So doing the show, suddenly we're connecting, and people from all over the world. That's the point I was looking to make there. I came back to it. People from all around the world are checking out the show, from Brazil, from Ghana, from Belgium, from Siberia, from India. I mean, it's just jazz's international form. It's been fantastic. So I started doing the show. I'm looking at the page here on April 7th. And let me just run down the list of people who have been my guests here this year. 95% of these people are my friends. And I knew that, they'd want to do this. So it's been cool. The trumpeter Ray Vega. Oh, here's a friend from LA. Oh, listening to Sketches of Spain. Yes, that's a classic. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to, the list of my friends here who've been on the show. Ray Vega, the trumpet player. Jason Miles, amazingly talented producer and keyboardist. Jeff Coffin, saxophonist. Bob Mintzer, educator, musician, and now he's writing the score for my documentary film that I'm working on. Mike Casey, very talented young musician, calls himself the Melody Poet. David Chesky, my cousin, who has a label, Chesky Records, and plays the piano and writes music. Very talented guy. Julie Loken, new audiences, producers of great jazz concerts. Mark Morganelli, his great club and loft, whose name I forgot. Now, hold on a second. I'll get it. I forgot it. This is one of the perils of
Tarrytown, New York. And we understand until there's a
this is,
pure,
pardon me.
And then ultimately
Oh boy.
vaccine.
This sometimes happens. You forget something. This also happens as you age. I'm 71. It sometimes happens to me where you can't remember a name or something. It's like a file that won't open. And then half an hour later, it just opens. There it is. So Mark Morganelli, a great presenter of jazz. Let's see. Bill Pierce, played with Art Blakey. Tony Williams, taught for many years at Berkeley. He's been on a couple of times. Randy Brecker. Dave Frank, who's become a very good friend of mine, very talented pianist, teacher, student of Lenny Tristano. He's going to do some analysis of Keith Jarrett tomorrow on my Keith Jarrett show. Roger Rosenberg, the great baritone sax player. Winston Byrd, a new friend, excellent trumpet player. Lauren Scharnberg. Lauren is a jazz activist since he was a kid. I mean, he was Benny Goodman's manager. He does a great page on Facebook, Rare Jazz Photos, among his many other activities. Claire Daly, baritone sax player. New York, Lou Tabakin, excellent musician, husband of Toshiko. Ted Pankin, my friend, the journalist. We did a show about Bradley's and beyond. Steve Wilson, played with Art Blakey, many other people, now teaches at the CCNY. Ralph Peterson. I mean, there's a lot of people on here. This is, I sometimes forget. Another drummer after that, Alvin Queen. Hendrik Merkins. Hendrik is going to be back here in a couple of weeks. Melissa Aldana, the wonderful tenor player who won the month competition from Chile. Antonio Hart, alto saxophonist, also teacher now. Jimmy Heath was his mentor. Jimmy Heath was my mentor in many ways as well. Antonio, I met in the late 90s when he was part of the new crop of young lions that the record labels were very interested in marketing at the time. Benny Green, I call him the kid from Berkeley, played with Art and Betty, and he's been on the show a couple of times in various capacities. Scott Robinson, the saxophone scientist, and also a saxophonist over in Paris, played with Miles. Loved his Blue Note recordings. Rick Margitza, my dear friend David Liebman. We did a great show about remembering Mulgrew. Nicholas Payton, outspoken fellow. I admired Nicholas. He did a live streaming thing for a couple of months. I think he stopped. Christian Sands, great upcoming pianist. Steve Provisor. I'm sorry, Steve. We did a show about jazz on film. Tribute to McCoy. From Italy, Stefano Bellani. My friend Don Lukoff set that up. That was very interesting. Who is Hannibal? Louis Porter. Louis is a teacher, pianist, author, scholar. Don Lukoff, the jazz publicist. Micah Benny. I was just talking to one of my friends. We were like early jazz fans when we were teenagers. We sat around after school, after junior high school, and ate cold potato knishes and listened to Blue Note records, remembering the first time we saw Maynard Ferguson at Lake Compounce, Bristol, Connecticut, summer 1965, I think, or 66. Little could I have imagined that, and Maynard Ferguson was incredible, that band was incredible, but so many years later, the pianist in the band, Mike Abeni, an arranger, would later become a good friend of mine. He was on the show. Shout out to Mike Abeni. Let's see. Denny Zeitland. I remember Denny Zeitland on the Jeremy Steig record, Flute Fever. His piano playing jumped out of the speaker. I ended up working with Denny, did videos with him, a website. He was on the show. Jed Levy, a saxophone player that I met through Hendrik Merkens, did a fantastic version outside of Sonny Rollins' Freedom Suite with Craig Handy. And he sent that to me, and I ended up putting it up on the channel. We did a show together on Sonny's birthday. We did a tribute to Wallace Roney, who passed this year. It's a tragic story. I did an Art Blakey. We did a show with George Cables. Wonderful man, fantastic pianist for many, many years. Tony Zawinul, the Zawinul Foundation, a veteran of Maynard's band, Dennis de Blasio, my good friend Marvin Stamm, wonderful trumpet player, Javon Jackson, who I met as a kid, and now he's like, these guys that I met when they were kids, like Benny and Javon. I met them when they were in their 20s. Now Javon is like heading the Jackie McLean Institute at the University of Hartford. We did a show with Bill Goodwin and Ted Pankin about their Phil Woods book. Ben Sidran, Jazz Feldman, the jazz detective, Zev Feldman, Saul Rubin, the very talented guitarist who's also an animator working on my film, John Gordon and his book, a gentleman who came from the same hometown as me. Actually, he wasn't born there, but he moved there in his formative high school years there. He went to Hall High School with Brad Meldau. I'm talking about Joel Fram, serious tenor saxophonist. A couple of weeks ago, I did a show with Joe Farnsworth that was big fun. Joe is not only a great drummer, but he's a historian and a man who has nothing but respect for the musicians that he's worked with. And of course, the last show we did was the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival. I came upon a cache, so to speak, of videos recorded live at the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival that I'm going to be showcasing here on the channel over the course of the next couple of months. And the music is fantastic. So I did an entire show about that, which you could look back on. And tomorrow, New Year's Day, not tomorrow, Friday, New Year's Day is my Keith Jarrett tribute. Sadly this year, we found out that Keith had a stroke last year and he can't play anymore. I don't know if he's going to return to action. I mean, this is something very sad that happens in this life. It's unexpected. We can't write every chapter of our life as we would like it to be. It just doesn't work that way in this life. It's sad, but that's just the way it is. Horrible things happen to really good people. And Keith Jarrett can't play anymore. Sonny Rollins can't play anymore. I mean, Michael Brecker died at 58. Clifford Brown at 27. It goes on. So as I approach my final chapters, I don't know when they're going to be. Every day is important. I try to do something meaningful in this life, which I am doing with this music and with my other work, my film about anti-Semitism, which is really important to me, and also to send out the love that people send back to me in this life, both in my family, friends, and the outside world. As I go through this life, there's so much negativity. Like Coltrane said, I just want to be a force for good. There's so many negative forces out there in this world. He certainly was a force for good. He certainly was an inspiration to me and to many other people, not only his music, but the person he was. And I think that's what I've thought a lot about lately, and with my involvement with this music, my dedication to it, especially after moving to New York, growing up listening to it, then finally getting to New York and becoming part of the scene and getting to know so many of these people. And this is a serious thing to play this music, a serious dedication. And most of the people who play this music are serious people. like any group of people, there's some jerks. I mean, if you take a cross section of 100 people, be they plumbers or jazz musicians, there's going to be 10 of them who are really remarkable, and maybe 50 or 60, decent people, pretty good, and 10 or 20 total jerks. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, look at my Jimmy Smith story sometime. Watch that video. Jimmy Smith was a unique experience in my life. The only time anyone ever threatened with me with castration and then was going to barbecue it for me and feed it back to me. The fact that a jazz musician had offered me this threat was kind of unique. This was during an interview for a booklet that I never got to write. But when I heard this over the phone, I laughed for 2 minutes. I mean, but I understood. Troubled guy, Jimmy Smith. People of his generation and other younger musicians, black musicians, have suffered a lot because of racism in the United States, especially the older musicians, what they had to live through. Today's no day at the beach either. If you're a black man in America, you walk outside your house, the police can kill you at any time. I mean, that's just the reality of how bad it is in this country. But I'm not going to go there right now. So, we've lost a lot of people this year as well. I put up a video of some of the people we've lost. I'm just going to just take a look at that and say a few things about some of these people who are friends of mine. My friend Rusty Hassan, who's a disc jockey, on-air personality, if you like, in Washington, D.C., who's going to be on my show in a couple of weeks. He mentioned, you saw the list, he said, we knew a lot of these people. They were friends of ours. And they were, because there's a community here that I feel very lucky to be a part of. So I look at some of these recent passings and I see people that I knew, that I interacted with. A recent passing, Stanley Cowell. Some of these people aren't household names, but they're known in our community. They're serious musicians, and they made a contribution. They were part of this thing. And Stanley Cowell was one of them. I got to know him and hear him first with the Heath brothers. And he was an educator for many years. He passed recently. And Andrew White. Now, there's a really, really remarkable man. Now, this is a guy who, first of all, he transcribed every Coltrane solo. Let me say that again. That is a remarkable feat. Andrew White transcribed every Coltrane solo. Now, we're not only talking about the early Coltrane solos from the early 50s with when Coltrane played with Johnny Hodges and Dizzy Gillespie. We're talking about the Coltrane solos from 65, 66, 67. Happy New Year, Lou Tabakin. Imagine trying to transcribe the music that Coltrane played, his tenor solos in his later years, from Stellar Regions and Ascension and all that stuff. Andrew White did that. That was his life's work. Uh-oh. I said something and Alexa responded to it in the other room. I have 2 women that I live with here, Alexa and Siri. I don't know how they're not even human. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, Andrew White. We're going to get more into detail about Andrew, a force of nature in many, many ways. Rusty and I will talk about that in more detail. Also, Stanley Crouch passed this year. Stanley was somewhat of a controversial figure. Many people loved him. Some people liked him. Some people didn't like Stanley so much. I liked Stanley. He's a very opinionated guy. I didn't always agree with him, but we had many wonderful discussions at Tower Records on 4th Street, and also in the late 70s, Stanley, when he was writing for the Village Voice at the beginning, he kind of booked the Tin Palace, which is a fantastic jazz scene. And he also wrote a nice review of a show I worked on in '79 called Bebop that Richard Dubin directed with Gary Bartz and Walter Davis Jr. That was a fantastic experience. Gary Bartz, not Gary Bartz, thank God. No, please. Gary Bartz is still with us. He's 80 years old. Which is another thing that's hard to believe suddenly when your friends start turning 80. Gary Peacock, Keith Jarrett's collaborator for many years in the Standards Trio. Known to many people for it as kind of an avant-garde bassist. He passed this year. Steve Grossman. I saw Steve Grossman with Miles, and Miles at Fillmore that night with Keith Jarrett and Chick Corea and Aerto and Jack DeJohnette and Dave Holland and Miles and Steve Grossman. Wow. And of course, played with Elvin, with Dave Liebman. Let's see some of the other people here. Johnny Mandel wrote Shadow Your Smile. Fantastic arranger. Nat King Cole's brother, Freddie. Wonderful man, great vocalist. Henry Grimes, a bassist, played with Sonny Rollins, a lot of avant-garde stuff. Giuseppe Logan, ESP Records, another avant-gardist. Jimmy Cobb left us. Wow. The last survivor of Kind of Blue. I interviewed Jimmy in the 90s. Another really warm man, wonderful guy. My friend Hendrik Merkins made an excellent record with him. You should check out. I forgot the name. Mike Longo passed. I think he was one of the first COVID victims. Mike played with Dizzy. He was also a Baha'i and a teacher, wrote some books. Lee Konitz passed this year. Lee was in his 90s. Check out the Lee Konitz videos I have. He did a thing on Highlights in Jazz. It's almost like a comedy routine. He was just around for many different eras, from bebop, Birth of the Cool, free jazz, so to speak. Opinionated man, funny, great musician. Lots of videos on YouTube you can check out. Let's see, Ellis Marsalis, Brantford, Jason, Winton's father, Richie Cole, Alto Madness, Jimmy Merritt from Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Philadelphia, Onaje Allen Gums, pianist. I knew Alan. I interviewed him for Contemporary Keyboard Magazine. Got to know him a bit, and he great stuff he did with Woody Shaw, especially on that album Rosewood. Some of his writing on there. Bucky Pizzarelli. Yeah, he was a great guitarist, father of John Pizzarelli. Wallace Roney passed this year. Wallace was a troubled guy, great trumpeter. In so many cases we could say never got the recognition he deserved, and he didn't. Check out my Wallace Roney tribute. Someday, Ted Pankin or somebody will write a book about him. Ray Mantilla, a percussionist. I think he lived, if I'm not mistaken, in Manhattan Plaza. Danny Ray Thompson, baritone sax player with Sun Ra. I spent, and you can check out my Sun Ra video. I talk about the day that I spent with Sun Ra back in the 70s, and then I hooked up with him again on the train once. But in Sun Ra's row house in Germantown in Philadelphia, where he lived with a number of members of the band, Danny Thompson, his baritone sax player for many years, also lived there. So he was part of a magical day I spent with Sun Ra. We also lost from Cameroon, Manu Dibango, Sol Makosa. Wonderful trumpet player, died at the beginning of the year from Brazil. Claudio Roditi. Got to hear him many times. Great Brazilian trumpeter. And keyboardist who came to recognition with Pat Metheny, and that was Lyle Mays. But I guess for me, the two biggest losses this year were at the beginning of the year, we lost Jimmy Heath. Now, Jimmy Heath made it into his 90s, and he lived a very productive, loving, funny. I mean, there's so many adjectives you could use to describe Jimmy Heath. I mean, most people know his music. I got to know Jimmy as a person. I knew his music from when I was a kid on Riverside, Cannonball in New York, his composition Gemini, where Cannonball introduced that Jimmy Heath, and now it's a composition by Jimmy Heath, talked a little about Jimmy Heath. And then when I first got to New York, a friend of mine who was Clark Terry's protege, a guy named Richard Dubin, introduced me to Clark Terry. I got to meet Clark Terry, and through him I met Jimmy Heath, and then Jimmy started to perform more with the Heath brothers. It was like in the mid-'70s when they formed the Heath brothers. And I saw them in person a number of times. And then I guess it was 78 when I was writing for Downbeat, I got an assignment to write an article about the Heath brothers. Their first record, I think, was on Strata East Records, which Stanley Cowell, who I mentioned before, was the label that he had with Charles Tolliver. Great label. The Heath brothers did a record on there, and then they got signed to Columbia Records. In the late 70s, there was a burst of energy from Columbia Records. They recorded a lot of music, Dexter Gordon, Woody Shaw, and the Heath brothers, and Freddie Hubbard, and Herbie Hancock, and a lot of music, some of which has never been reissued. I hope it comes out. A lot of great stuff there. So I got the assignment to interview the Heath brothers. So at that time, I was living in Penthouse 2, 210 West 101st Street, New York, New York, 10025. I even remember my phone number, 212-222-1950. So the Heath brothers are on their way to my house. And I guess I can tell this story. It's not that, nothing here that needs to be censored. I may have even told it before in video. So before they came in, I was listening to Duke Ellington in Newport, 1957, the Paul Gonsalves solo. It takes like 27 choruses, I think, 28 choruses. An incredible solo. I was listening to that, and I had also, a friend of mine had some Afghani hash. It was like black Afghani hash with a stamp on it. It was really fantastic. So I was smoking some of that hash. The doorbell rings. It's the Heath brothers. They come in, and immediately they knew exactly what I was listening to, and they got into it, and they saw what I had this. I said, "Do you guys want to smoke some hash?" Yes. So that was the beginning of, a multi-decade friendship that I had with Jimmy Heath. Jimmy stopped getting high, by the way, not long after that for health reasons. Percy, I don't know, but maybe 6 months after that, I was at a concert at the 92nd Street Y, and I ran into Percy, and he said, "Oh, I got, come on outside. I got a friend here I want you to meet." I said, "Friend? You want me to meet?" "Okay." I go out. He said, "Here's the friend." He pulls out a joint. Anyway, Jimmy and I were really good friends over the years. He was very helpful in many ways. And after I moved to Tucson, he came out here to be a guest with the Tucson Jazz Institute to play with them. I guess this was, 2015, I think, maybe 2016, I can't remember the year. And Tucson Jazz Institute is one of the best high school jazz education programs in the country. So, great, I get to hang out with Jimmy and Mona, who's Jimmy's wife, wonderful person. They've been married since 1960. They were married since 1960. So he comes out here with these kids, these high school kids, and something really remarkable happens. Here's this 90-year-old guy and these 15 and 16-year-old kids, and master-student, classic apprentice situation. And it was beautiful to watch. And when the guys told me we're going to bring Jimmy back, we're going to do a recording, I said, geez, I'd like to do a documentary. So I ended up doing a documentary about it called Passing the Torch. You've seen some of it here on YouTube. It's on YouTube, it's on Vimeo, it's on Amazon Prime. And it was great to work with Jimmy, and I got to spend more time with him. And incredible musician, great teacher, arranger, tenor player, soprano player, great stories, incredible stories, Coltrane stories, which you should check out here on the channel, and survived prostate cancer in the 80s, but had bladder cancer, some other complications. It was a multi-year thing, but he unfortunately passed this year. And I miss him tremendously. These people can't be replaced. They'll never, you just can't replace them. They're remarkable in so many ways. And I'm going to close out this segment here with McCoy Tyner, passed this year, now McCoy's been sick for, I don't know, I can't remember how many years, 5, 6, 7 years, but he's kept going all this time. Of course, my love of McCoy Tyner goes back to the 60s. When I was first getting into jazz, Coltrane was a little bit beyond me. In the mid-60s, when I was listening to Lee Morgan and Dizzy Gillespie and Bird, Coltrane was like, I knew about him, but just didn't hear it yet. And in fact, I remember the day he died. It was the next day, his obit in the New York Times, certainly. And I'm a child of the 60s. What can I tell you? During a psilocybin trip in 1969, I heard A Love Supreme, and that opened the door. And, I would say the next 5 or 6 years, I listened to almost nothing but Coltrane. I also took a lot of acid back then. But that's not really part of the story. The part of the story is that Coltrane music is something that reached me in a very profound way and continues to. And part of Coltrane's thing in the 60s was, of course, McCoy Tyner. Now, I wasn't hip enough, although I started to come to New York in 65, I could have probably seen Coltrane live if I was a little bit hipper at the time, maybe on one of those Sunday matinees at the Vanguard. So I didn't see Coltrane live. I've certainly seen the videos. But when I got to New York, I saw McCoy live. And the first time I saw McCoy live was at a club in Brooklyn called The East, way out in Brooklyn. And it was the Sahara Band. It was Sonny Fortune, Calvin Hill, and Alphonse Mouzon. And it was just incredible. I'd never seen that kind of energy. I'd never seen anybody play the piano like that before. And in those years there, late 60s, early 70s, I saw McCoy a number of times. At the Vanguard, at Slugs, at other clubs, with Azar Lawrence, with Gary Bartz. Always fantastic. A woman I was living with at the time, Faye, she said, she called her nickname for her was Magic Fingers. And I spoke to him a couple of times to say hello and thank him for the music at some of those gigs. There was something, the energy of the music, but McCoy was a spiritual man, and that was part of it as well. I talked before about how people go through this life, how McCoy went through this life, the man he was. I really didn't get to know him until the 90s when he did a recording session with Joe Henderson. I need a drink of juice and seltzer. I'll be back in 10 seconds. Okay, so, what happened? 1994, RCA Studios, West 44th Street, McCoy Tyner, Joe Henderson, Ron Carter, and Al Foster. And I was there for for the first day of the session when they recorded most of the music. Got to hang out in the studio with McCoy Tyner and Joe Henderson and watch them work. And I remember that in between takes, McCoy and Joe were sitting. McCoy was like sitting at the piano. Joe was like sitting in a chair next to him. And McCoy was going through the real book, and they were trying to, figure out what they were going to play next by looking in the real book. And McCoy was looking through the real book and says, "Oh, here's one of my tunes." For those who don't know, the real book is a book that it contains a lot of famous jazz tunes, composition standards that musicians utilize. I think they still utilize it to learn tunes from one source. It was a bootleg book, so to speak. But anyway, McCoy's going through. Oh, here's one of my tunes, and all of a sudden he starts playing one of Joe Henderson's tunes, and Joe Henderson says, "Oh, that's one of my tunes." That was really special to be in the studio with them. Just thinking about it, flashing back on it. And then I guess about a couple of years later, I did an interview with them. I was writing for Jazz Times in the 90s. McCoy Tyner, once again, can't be replaced. There's a few some pianists have touched on some of that energy, that special energy that McCoy had in his music. I mean, I think about John Hicks, certainly young pianist Benito Gonzalez. McCoy. So what I'm going to do here now is a lot of people have been leaving comments here. I'm going to look at some of the comments and respond. I want to thank you people for leaving the comments. Let's see here. One of our viewers from Glasgow. Middle of the night. Oh my God. Charles Boyle. Well, thanks for watching, Charles. I don't know if you're still on here. I've been babbling for about 45 minutes here. But Glasgow. I hope things are cool over there for you guys. Let me see. Oh, yes. Mythic Mesa commenting on Alvin Queen. Alvin Queen's a wonderful drummer, lives in Europe, played with everybody. A lot of fun to interview him. Also, he liked the Benny Green show. Yeah, Benny will be back, and Scott Robinson, another interesting fellow. Hello, Eric in Michigan. One suggestion is interview someone from the Yellow Jackets. Well, I did interview Bob Mintzer, who is from the Yellow Jackets, and sometime in 2021, Russ Ferrante from the Yellow Jackets will be a guest on the show. Yes, it was big fun interviewing George Cables. I think I first heard George. It was either with Sonny or with Dexter. He's one of our living masters, thankfully. Let's see here. Dave Rogers. Yeah, I agree. That was fun. Mike left us much too soon. But Randy will be back in a couple of weeks for another show. Let's see here. Okay. Eat, Sleep, Moguls. Hello, Rochester. Appreciate your kind words. We got Steve Gadd from Rochester. Wow. Sal Nistico. tenor player. I recently put up. No, I'm not going to get political. Let's see here. What else we got? Yeah, Jimmy Merritt was a great bassist in Philadelphia. Aside from Blakey, he didn't do too much, but certainly those records, all those records he did, and all the editions of the Jazz Messages that he played with, ensure that he's going to live forever. That's for sure. Let's see. Somebody says 80. I said before, a lot of people I know are turning 80s. 80 is not that old in this modern day. If you make it and you're healthy, but this is a crapshoot we don't know. Some people disappear sooner. Hello, Sean. I'm well, thanks. And yeah, I'm glad this has been a fucked up, horrible year. I didn't know Lyle, but some people I did, and certainly his music indicates he was a rather special fella. I miss him. Let's see. Yeah, well, sometimes I do go political. I can't help it, but I don't talk about that too much. Once in a while, though. Let's see. Alan, who lived in New York when Al was in Tucson, is a 212 story. Okay, I don't know what it is. Now, the Paul Gonsalves solo, there's some mystery. There's a story behind if that is the actual recording for Newport or it was recorded in the studio. I've heard varying things about that. I have to get away from that. Let's see. I mean, I have to find out the truth about that. I'll look into that. Yes, Yvonne. That was Yvonne Irvin, who was a force in jazz, wonderful producer and writer who lived here in Tucson and passed away. She was Alan's wife. Let's see. I'm the violist who played on Phil Wood's Keep It Simple, Philology, working with fellows able to play. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we did a show with Phil Woods. I'm gonna do a show with Bill Goodwin, who was Phil's drummer. Phil, pretty remarkable guy. Yeah. So JVG is stoned. I don't get the weed thing. It made me lazy and imperative. I guess it has different effects on people. I do not recommend drugs, believe me. They have different effects on different people. I am someone who has been, I'll be perfectly honest about this, I've been a cannabis connoisseur for 50 years. It has never really affected me in a negative way. Once in a while I get tired, but I've led an amazingly productive life. But I do not recommend it. However, I know that cannabis does work as medicine for many people. I can recommend that. Let's see here. Okay, here's a commercial. Please subscribe to Jay Shamma's vlogs, guys. I hope he's not a child molester or a mass murderer, okay? Let's see. Jimson Rod. Jimson's not his name. People don't use their real names on Facebook or YouTube all the time here. What else we got here? R.I.P. McCoy. What would keyboard compositing artistry bid without him? How about Hal Galpert? Yeah. He talks about Hal. I did some videos with Hal. Actually, I shot them, I guess it was in 2012 when Hal was up at University of Colorado in Boulder. Hal's a great teacher and communicator. Those are some of my most requested and most viewed videos. A lot to be learned from those. Hal is in upstate New York. I hope he's well. Talk about being in your 80s. Appreciate everything you do. Well, thanks. That's nice of you to say that. Okay. My first time hearing McCoy was at the Vanguard a Sunday afternoon with Coleman Hawkins. Now, that's interesting because in 66 or 67, I saw a double bill at the Vanguard with Coleman Hawkins and one of the early performances of the Mel Lewis Thad Jones Band. But he saw McCoy. Great, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, well, thank you. That's a nice word. Okay. My fans are out tonight. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, the real book. That was it. Thanks for keeping it real. Okay, I appreciate your subscribing. Yeah, please subscribe and like my videos. You know, like, it's not an ego thing for me. I know what I do is pretty good. I reach a few people. I'm happy to do it. But I want to reach more people and to navigate the YouTube algorithm. The more likes, the more subscribers I have, the more people see the videos. Let's see here. What else we got? Okay, Roland said, a long-time subscriber. Thanks for the memories and stories. From Scranton. I work with Tony Marino. Tony's the bass player. Played with my friend Dave Liebman. Oh, yes, definitely. Benito's a fantastic piano player. Watch out for that guy. I would say two pianists I've heard a lot of lately that I really think are going to do something and already are, Benito and Christian Sands. Definitely. Okay. Let's see here. I can do without hearing Bob Minster every day. Well, don't. You know? I mean, you know, if you don't like it, listen to something else. Yes, I just found out today that trumpet player, composer, activist Frank Kimbrough died of a heart attack in his home. I guess he was in his 50s. There'll be more about that, I'm sure, but who knows, you know, what's going on here. Oh, Jacob Collier. What an incredible, talented guy. I don't know about his own music, but that thing that he does there, I mean, music that he writes himself, but this thing where he plays all the instruments and he produces the videos and it's incredible, really. Let's see. What do we got here? Yes. Bootsy Barnes. I've got him in a couple of videos. A Philadelphia tenor player. He also passed from COVID. Let's see here. Yvette, you make me smile. You make me smile. Okay. Let's see. Bob Dura and I played a few times and he was prolifically stoned. You never know, but he was still on point. Like I say, I don't recommend drugs. You know, it's an individual choice. Some people like it, some people don't. Bill is amazing. Yes, I like South African jazz a lot. I liked Becky Masikolo, I think his name was, I can't remember. He's a pianist. But I did an interview with Abdullah Ibrahim once. I like his music very much. And my friend Renee McLean lived in South Africa for many years. We haven't spoken about it, though. I guess that pretty much catches up on the comments here. And let's see. So, let me tell you what's coming up here on Jazz Video Guy Live and some of the videos I got coming up here. And then I'm going to jump off and work on my Keith Jarrett show because this Keith Jarrett show is kind of like producing a little documentary film because I'm going to have video. Let me just write this down here. I'm going to have, sometimes you can't multitask. Hold on. JazzVideoGuyLive.com. Yeah, so the Keith Jarrett tribute is going to include Keith speaking himself. You know, he got the National Endowment Jazz Masters Award, I think 2014, recently. He made a very interesting acceptance speech. So I'm going to put some of that in the show, along with some other interviews that he's done. And of course, performances over the years with Charles Lloyd, his first solo piano work in Europe, his electric work with Miles, and then his deeper solo piano work, and then with the Standards Trio. Keith Jarrett, very prolific musician, and then Dave Frank, the pianist and educator, does a great analysis of Keith's work on different periods. So that's my New Year's Day show. And next week, January 8th, the show's on Friday afternoon. January 8th, Paul Winter. Paul Winter, perhaps better known outside of jazz at this point, but I remember when Paul Winter arrived in the early 60s, he had a group based out of Washington that did a State Department tour of Brazil and ended up playing at the White House and made a record for Columbia Records. And that's how I first heard of Paul Winter, excellent musician. And there's more to the story. Tune in and check it out. January 15th, Monty Alexander. Monty Alexander, speaking of interesting debuts, Monty Alexander's first major gig in the United States, he is from Jamaica, moved to Miami as a teenager, was discovered down there by a friend of Frank Sinatra's who brought him up to New York. And Monty Alexander was the pianist at Jilly's, the restaurant bar that Jilly Rizzo, Frank Sinatra's close friend, owned and operated for many years in New York City in the 50s, West 50s. And that was, Monty was like 19, hanging out with Frank Sinatra, playing with those guys. Went on to fascinating careers as a pianist. And week after that, the tallest German harmonica player on planet Earth, Hendrik Merkens. Hendrik's a good friend. Made a great record last year with Jimmy Cobb and another one recently where he plays Brazilian music. And then Joe Lovano is coming, January 29th. Used to work with Joe. I've done many videos. When I first got started as jazz video guy, I was basically working with three people: Billy Taylor, Joe Lovano, and Sonny Rollins. I was producing their websites and doing videos with them, and all three of them were very encouraging. There probably would be no jazz video guy without Billy Taylor, Joe Lovano, and Sonny Rollins. So we'll talk about Joe's new music. He's always got something going on. Never stands still. February 5th, Rusty has, now I can't even say his fucking name. Take two. Rusty Hassan. Rusty's a longtime jazz advocate, writer, and DJ, now out of D.C. Good friend of Andrew White's. We'll talk about the D.C. jazz scene and jazz radio and Andrew White. And then week after that, February 12th, Randy Brecker and his wife, Ada Rovati. Yeah, they've got a record out where they play together. The week after that, February 19th, Dr. Eddie Henderson, best known initially for his work with Herbie Hancock's M1 Dishi Band. March 5th, vocalist Roberta Gambarini, who recorded with Jimmy Heath, among other people. Many people in New York know her, worked extensively there. In Europe, hopefully you can meet her on the show. And let's see, let me go to my Jazz Video Guy panel here. I'll tell you the next videos that are coming up on my channel here in the next couple of weeks. And then I'm going to sign off here. I don't have it scheduled too far in advance. Let me see here. So, New Year's Eve, McCoy Tyner, Ballad for Isha with Gary Bartz. And then January 4th, from the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival Maiden Voyage, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Tony Williams, and Bobby Hutcherson, recorded August 28th, 1987. That same year, on January 7th, I'm debuting Tony Williams' Clearways. That's the band with Mulgrew Miller, Tony Williams, well, obviously Tony Williams, Bob Hurst, Bill Pierce, and Wallace Roney. Then another January 11th, McCoy Tyner, Blues on the Corner, that same group with Eric Gravatt, Gerald Cannon, and Gary Bartz. and then an incredible Art Blakey tribute from the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival with Terra Masahino, Terrence Blanchard, Bill Pierce, George Adams, Benny Green, Ralph Peters. I mean, you got to see it. It's on the Mount Fuji show, but I broke it out into its own video. So that's it. An hour went by here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support of what I'm doing. Thanks for your support of this music. I have no idea what's going to happen in 2021. I'm going to continue doing what I do, which is post jazz videos and do my Jazz Video Guy live show and work on my documentary about anti-Semitism and try to survive whatever is going on here at this time. I don't know how long it's going to last. Luckily, on a personal note here, something really special happened to me this year. Before the virus went on, I met a wonderful woman. We've become very close. I've spent most of my time in quarantine with her. That's a really nice thing when that happens to you in this life, to love someone and have someone love you as well. So I'm a pretty lucky guy in my life at this point. But I hope that all the goodness can be extended to everyone else, because there's been a lot of suffering in this world. And as I said at the beginning of this broadcast, I'm very concerned about my friends who are performers, who cannot find work at this time. Hang on. We'll do everything we can to help you. But something will happen to end this. I don't know what it'll be. So, Happy New Year.